Welcome to this month's Creation Justice webinar, a gathering place for building a faith-rooted and faith-sustained movement addressing many of the critical issues facing our society today. I'm Brooks Barrett, the Environmental Justice Minister for the United Church of Christ, and I am joined by my esteemed co-host, the Reverend Michael Malcolm, the Executive Director for the People's Justice Council and Alabama Interfaith Power and Light. Today, we are talking about defending that which is sacred and holy. Mount Sinai has been used as an analogy to Oak Flat to help those of us who are Christian or Jewish get a sense of the stakes at play. Michael, can you frame what we are talking about today in a way that makes it real for people?
Yeah, Brooks. Beloved, we are here today to hear about the ongoing battle to stop the seizure of sacred land. It is the land that, as Jerry Thomas said, is where he goes to pray to his creator. It is where he asks for forgiveness and prays about the things that burden him and that burden his family. If put in a Christian context, this is equivalent to the government trying to seize St. Peter's Cathedral. Perhaps you aren't moved by that one. Maybe something more local will do. It's equivalent to the government coming and taking your church that you worship in, that you marry in, that you pray in, that you bury in. It is your church that you grew up in. In other words, we are here because this too is our fight. We have a stake in this too. This is a collective fight. I'm told that one can chase 1,000 and two can send 10,000 a running. As Reverend Dr. Gerald Durley states, it's not enough to be on the battlefield. We must also engage in the battle. I look forward to being equipped with the tools necessary to engage in this battle through our guests today.
Thank you, Michael, for that framing. And let me now introduce our guest. I'll say up front that we discovered at the last minute that Sarah Augustine won't be able to join us. She got called away by a very urgent situation that she needed to attend to. And so let me now introduce our two speakers that we have with us. We have Dr. Wendsler Nosie Sr., who is a former tribal chairman of the San Carlos Apache Tribe, which consists of nearly 17,000 tribal members on the San Carlos Apache Reservation, a reservation that encompasses 1.8 million acres. He has received many awards and recognitions, including one from the National Council of Churches for his work as a leader of spirituality among youth, in addition to many other accomplishments. He is the founder and leader of the Apache Stronghold, which has been at the forefront in opposing the copper mining of Oak Flat. Then we'll have the Reverend Carol Rose, who is the co-pastor of Shalom Mennonite Fellowship in Tucson, Arizona. Before coming to Shalom, she was director of Christian Peacemaker teams. She pastored Mennonite churches, and she served with the Mennonite Central Committee. On top of all of this, Carol has been active in many organizations devoted to dismantling oppressions and to Indigenous solidarity. Those organizations include both Apache Stronghold and the Coalition to Dismantle the Doctrine of Discovery. We are delighted to have both of our panelists with us today. And Wendsler, we will turn it first to you.
Good morning. Well, thank you. I really want to say thank you to this today for being able to share some information. And I just want to say I really enjoyed your opening with the little video there. That means so much. And then also the framing. The words are really powerful because that's called. It seems to be a call to the people, which is very much needed. I guess trying to get to the nuts and bolts of the whole thing, I always try to tell people that, we're looking at a lot of different categories, but the main ones that come to the forefront is the religion, and then it comes the environment, then it comes the political side of things. And I think sort of like saying, talking to the choir when it comes to the religion, you know, we understand what God, we should all understand what God's creation is. And there's certain important parts that we really need to take to the forefront. And one is our Mother Earth, which provides for all of us. And what God had created that for us. And what we say is that that's the greatest gift that God gave us. And the reason why we say mother is because if you look at what it gives us, from food to everything else, it's our survival. It makes us who we are. And even our bodies come from that. And so it's real critical that we understand that more so now than ever, because if you look what's happening in the country, we're destroying these places that will no longer exist, and we're eliminating our aquifers, uh, which took centuries to be there. And you know, and the question has to come up, you know, why, you know, why are we doing this, and who are we believing, and who are we following? And then a very important part, you know, we come to is the religion. The religion, as I keep saying, you know, and looking at what the Bible talks about, that these places are holy because God touched the world. God touched these places. And in these places that we're talking about, the Chebagofte in Apache, you know, in English is like Oak Flats, but the Chebagofte is Gan Bigawang. It's the home of the angels. So, you know, I know that, you know, there's drawings or, you know, of angels. And the thing that I try to get, you know, Christian people to relate to is that in our Gan, you know, we have a crown, and that's his halo. That crown is made from the earth. And the picture tells us the creation, it tells us our responsibility. And you know, everything that our Gan people is, um, it's a very important part of who we are when God created the world. And like we say that God created communicators, and they're a big part of our life. And so what's happening with Resolution Copper on this particular mountain, they're going to destroy it, completely wipe it out in a place of where God touched the world, and where these angels reside is going to be destroyed. And so I don't know how many times, you know, our people, like from the 1800s, early 1900s, have told the United States, and we know we've been studied by the universities, and they know this, you know, they know this. And one of the main factors that this place wasn't touched before Resolution Copper came in was the fact that the studies show that this was a holy place for all the tribes. This is where the tribes congregated. But as we know, when Arizona was changing, you know, Arizona was the last state when the United States took over, and it created divisions, and they moved everybody out into reservations. But it was good that they left it alone, because what we hear and what we read is that they knew at that time that that was a significant place for everybody. We didn't know that as generations go by, you know, all that knowledge, you know, from all the studies was going to be diluted by this generation. And now they make no reference to this place being holy or sacred. And now, because of the United States, you know, through their policies and laws, through the 1872 Mining Act, any government land that is colonized, they can do at will with it. And so that even applies to foreign mining companies. And that's why foreign mining companies have the power to come into this country and take what they want, because that 1872 law had never changed. And on top of that, we have laws right now in Congress to extend and to dilute, well, not dilute it, but to extend the rights of them taking more land. So what we see is that that's in reference to what, you know, going into the political side of things. That's where we go into our congressional leaders talking about the Green New Deal, talking about we have to dig, take. But it seems like America on the political side are either not paying attention or don't understand how that works, where all these government lands that, should be there in preservation for the future, should be there, thinking ahead for the ones yet to be born. But they have a problem. And the problem is the fact that Oak Flats is a sacred place. It's a spiritual place. So when John McCain did the exemptions from all federal laws, the one thing that, because it's never been tried in a court case, is the spirituality, the religious part of it. And all the environmental stuff, our archaeological, our historic, the petroglyphs, all these things that make up who we are, through the federal law, the United States exempt the Resolution Copper, gave them the exemptions from all these laws. And then you go into the environmental issues, all the environment stuff were exempt, where we need to know the pros and cons of what this mine is going to do and what the after effects are. But they were totally exempt from that. So many of the people walked away from this because they thought it's over. The United States has already given this away. But what they forgot was in 1992, 93, I was arrested for praying on Mount Graham. And so what happened was that they were prosecuting me. And when the prosecutor was asking me questions, why did I go? Why was I there? And it was because of dreams that came, that the creator God, through angels, was calling me to the mountain to pray. And I got arrested. And what they told me was that don't ever come back like your people. And this place is a sacred and holy place with angels. And so I went to trial. And so when I was on the stand, they were asking me about God. So you're telling me if God or angels was to call you back, would you go? And I said, of course. When anybody, in their right mind deny that, you can't. And they said, if God calls you again to come back to the mountain, would you go? I said, yeah, I would have to. And so the court went into recess. So we were waiting for the scheduled date of when the court was going to start again. And then my attorney called me, like, I don't know, about 2-3 weeks later, and come to find out that they acquitted me. And so so it ended there. But about 9 months later, my attorney was talking with the prosecutor in the Safford area. And the prosecutor told him that we didn't want to try this case because it's about a religion, and there's really no laws that pertain to that, and it would be a difficult one. So the United States government called the University of Arizona and the Forest Service, and so they pressured the prosecutor to end the case. So he ended that way. So I was acquitted. And so that's when I learned that for Native people, they have no law yet. And so this court case that we're in is going to create that. And so we have the United States working to destroy our connection from Mother Earth to the Creator. And that's what they're going after. And then the crazy thing is they have Rio Tinto and BHP, the two mining giants, joining the court case at the Supreme Court against us. And so what we hear is Resolution Copper is looking for a church to go against us, but they haven't found anybody yet. And with the great work with Carol and everybody else, the religious people are standing with us on this case, because there's a spot that, there's a thing that happened with the EIS, the environmental impacts statements. And so we had a white lady who lives in the town of Superior who made a statement with us because she has the spiritual connections as well, just as equal to us. And her father was a preacher there in Superior. So she wrote a statement. I asked her, why can't you write one? Because we had like over 400 Apaches writing the statement about the religious connection, spiritual connection. So she did one, and the United States pulled her statement out. So when I asked the question, why? The response was she was a white lady. And I said, I know she's a white lady, but why? Then it got into the discussion that the only ones that can have a spiritual connection to the Creator is Native people. Then I said, you mean to tell me that white people, black people, and anybody else, they don't have that connection, is not allowed in the government? And they said to me, if even any one of these people want that kind of connection, they can go back to the other side. Then I said, wait a minute. I said, do the white people, black people, Asian people, and all the people who came here, do they know that this is the government's position? So my point is that if they win this case, then we're in the same category that the United States has free will to the land. And the only problem they have is the Native people are still connected to the land. So this case is going to set precedents to the future. And so I took this message to like people like Carol and other people, and the word spread that they got to answer to you too. I would think, because I would think you guys are no different than I am when you have that connection to the Creator and how Mother Earth, from the animals to the water to the dirt to everything to the stones, and how we pray. And it blows my mind, because if you look in Europe, when they talk about Mount Sinai, the burning bush, they talk about all these things. It's the same thing here. And so us Native people have never denied anybody that these sacred places only belong to us. It belongs to everybody. Just like if I went back overseas, I would respect those places because that was a spiritual happening that took place. So anyway, this case is real crucial right now to everybody. It is not just a war on us, it's a war on everybody. And I know everybody's paying attention to the other side of the world, but yet these laws are being passed. This court hearing is going to take place. And that's why as Native people, we really look at this country as a corporate country, as a colonized country. And that's scary, because if you leave out spirituality in the whole thing, then who are we? Who are we really religiously? It's a real scary thought when the United States, are fighting us in this way. And now what I'm excited about is that with this amicus brief that so many different denominations are joining us, now the United States will have to answer to the churches too, why their words and their belief carries no value. And so I know they're gonna really make the attempt to not want to hear this case. And I know that if they do hear it, their backs are gonna be against the wall. And so, it's a case that is really going to set the next 50, 100 years, because right now we don't have a case in the Supreme Court like this. And so I'm just, reaching out the best way I can to everybody, because I don't think, people realize the impact, because it's going to give the freedom to the United States to destroy and destroy and destroy. And we're talking about politicians. And that's why I tell people, as much as they don't care about me, it's the same amount. They don't care about you either for them doing this, And so we say here, there is a big religious battle here, because the United States has control all over the country. So whatever happens here is going to reflect everywhere else. And that's why we have indigenous people from all over the world cannot believe the United States has turned, because they're out there saying they're good about everything, but cannot believe that they turn against the Indian people one more time. And it feels like the old days when they came from Europe, took over the country. Now they have two powerful mining companies going to fight us in our religion. And I was saying, it just seems like all Americans would be upset about it, because now it's like a second war happening, but this time it's all of us. So anyway, I'll leave it there. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Wendsler, for getting us started. That was terrific insights and sharing from you. Deeply appreciate it. And now we turn to Carol.
Hello. I greet you. I greet you from this place where I am sitting on Tohono O'odham land in Tucson, Arizona. I greet you as somebody who is on a journey with Apache Stronghold right now. So this journey of prayer to the Supreme Court has been going along, gathering prayers, gathering power, gathering people's stories, and is headed east, headed to a court that thinks it can sever us from what is ours, even our own bodies, even the body of our Mother Earth. But a court that has been surprisingly sometimes open to Indigenous questions, not surprisingly open to certain religious freedom questions, but not yet tested with Indigenous religious freedom. So let's put them to the test. But we need to gather the kind of power that they don't necessarily know about. We need to gather the power of prayer, the power of communities standing up. And the United Church of Christ, who is hosting this webinar, and many other groups, as I've seen you arrive and put your identity in, who you are connected to other groups as well, have signed on to amicus briefs, joining the case with Apache Stronghold. This is important, and there is still time to gather more groups on the side of right, on the side of creation, on the side of dismantling the extractive logic that has gotten us into the poly crisis, the climate crisis, and all the other destructions of the earth. Apache Stronghold is an incredibly generous Indigenous group. They know that we settlers, me and my people, have occupied, have extractive logic so deep in that we think it's part of us. And yet they say, come on with us. Come on, join us. Because they know what sometimes we don't know. And that is that this is our salvation too. We are not doing this because the Apache over there need our help. Well, that's true too. But this isn't about us being the saviors of the poor. This is about working out our own salvation. Whether our people were extracted from your lands, whether your people were extracted from your lands by force or by economic or military, or whether your people like mine saw a good thing and came over, we are now in it together. And I have come to believe through years of praying with Apache Stronghold and with Oak Flat, with this sacred place, that not only is all creation sacred because God made it, but there are also key places that God imbued with some particular power for good, and that have been tended in prayer, and that power has deepened through centuries of ceremony and prayer. And places like Oak Flat are like the hinge of a door. They're key to protecting the whole earth, is what I have learned. So I invite you to consider that standing with Indigenous people for sacred sites is not something symbolic in the struggle to protect the earth. It is something central. Follow Indigenous leadership, and that is what you will learn, that these sacred sites are critical for all of us. Wendsler mentioned the petroglyphs. There's this beautiful petroglyph. It's been damaged. It's been yeah, I forget the word. Anyway, it's been damaged in ways that were intentional and malicious. But you can still see the parade of creation walking across this wide rock face. One creature, another creature, all the creatures of this place, and in the middle, not in the beginning, not at the end of the line, just among other relations, there are humans. That's where we belong, with our relatives, with our fellow creation, not pretending we know how to lead the way, not following along so far behind that we're not doing our part. The creation story on rock. Dr. Burnt mentioned that one of the groups that I'm part of, in addition to hanging with Apache Stronghold, is the Coalition to Dismantle the Doctrine of Discovery, which I'm going to, for short, call the Dismantling Coalition. And I want to say that if you know something about the Doctrine of Discovery, you might know that it has to do with ancient Catholic doctrine and permission to enslave people, permission to take the land given to people who identified as, or people who are from the nations that identified as Christian. But I want you to know that the Doctrine of Discovery is the current system of laws and structures designed to take land away from Indigenous people, designed to continue to enact genocide, both the immediate kind that kill people outright and the long-range strategies of removal and destruction of sacred land. Because you have to get Indigenous people off the land if you're going to make it a commodity, if you're going to make money off of it. And that extractive logic extends to all of us, that we are also for the purpose of making money for the system, of gathering and extracting and holding all of that good to somebody's self, somebody who's afraid. So we dismantle that system, and dismantling that system includes dismantling the laws that right now are threatening Oak Flat. It was a law passed by Congress. Dismantling the structures of race-based oppression that come against everybody who doesn't look like me. Dismantling the economic system that makes us all into commodities to extract rather than relatives to love and care for. If you could put the link to the coalition, the Dismantling Coalition, if anybody wants to go there, this coalition has taken a lead together with Arizona Interfaith Power and Light on collecting amicus briefs from churches and other groups, especially religious groups. That is a key way of supporting Apache Stronghold's struggle for sacred land. And it's not too late. Even if your denomination has already signed on, your congregation, your friends' congregations can sign on. This gathers support, it gathers steam. You have friends in other traditions. Pull them in, pull them in. And if your denomination has not yet signed on, then gather the prayers that will move them to do so, the prayers and action. The first call in supporting this work is always prayer. It is the strongest power we have. And then there's these other practical ways, like amicus briefs. If the journey to DC, to the Supreme Court, comes near you, come on out for the prayer gathering. Yes. If it doesn't come near you, organize one where you are and put it on Facebook and share it with Apache Stronghold, Save Oak Flat, Facebook and Instagram. Yeah, I think that's the to-do list, just because someone always asks that in a good meeting like this. That's enough, I think.
Thank you so much, Carol, for all that you have shared with us today. And
Yeah.
now we can dive deeper into some things. Michael, do you have a question for us?
Yeah, Carol, you beat me to the punch with the methods, because I was definitely going there. But I guess I can ask this to Dr. Nosie. Question for you, excuse me. Are you all a recognized tribe? And if so, how has it helped? If not, how has it hindered?
My tribal enrollment is with the San Carlos Apache Tribe. So the Apache Stronghold is a religious, traditional people. And as I don't know how many people know, but the United States created the Apache tribes, the government. And so it is run as a government function, just like the regular governments that run. And so we know that sometimes it's there to really dismantle us. And so to have 467 tribes across the country to pass resolutions to support us in this fight, and then now to go to the Supreme Court with the San Carlos Apache Tribe that I'm enrolled in, backing up the Apache Stronghold in this religious fight, brings us into a new era of tribes beginning to defend their people's sacred sites and our reason about what God gave us. And so if you really think about it, these tribes are now stepping out of the box, defying the United States for what they're doing to us. So the United States is going to be angry at the tribes. So I'm really proud of my tribe because they stepped out of the box, telling the United States, we disagree with you and we do not agree with you. And we are joining our people to defend these sacred places. And it's going to be a domino effect in this country. The tribes now will tell the United States, we do not agree, because what the United States controls the tribe with is we're on leased land. People think we own the land. We don't own the land. The United States owns the land. And so economically, educationally, health-wise, we have the dependency on that. So when I was the tribal chairman, when this was happening, John McCain threatened me on federal dollars coming to our reservation. And the reason why he threatened me is because if that goes in the media, then the scare tactic is in place that my people will become afraid that we're going to lose all these assistance that the United States give us. And that's what Congress does to tribes, to keep them quiet. And it's been like that. And so that's why this case is so unique, because now tribes are banding together to protect these places. And so, I would say that, it really hurts us. But now that the tribes are standing up and joining the fight, it's a big plus, because it puts the United States on call that you're no longer going to suppress us and take us. We're going to join this battle of protecting these sacred places. So there's pros and cons to it, but what's happening right now is a blessing. It's a blessing that our tribes are now taking that position. So if you can kind of imagine, if we were in South America or some other country, that's where the United States will come in and do their damage to the government. So we're no different than those governments that they provide, or the dictatorships or whatever. They try to set that up here with us. But I always say, I go back to Nixon, when Nixon gave us the Self-Determination Act. That's when we began to speak for ourselves, and that wasn't until the middle 70s.
Thanks so much for that response. And we've got another question from the audience here. There's a question that is seeking kind of what's the picture of what's proposed? So what's the destruction that would take place? If you can kind of fill out that picture for us, and maybe also tell us about Resolution Copper. What's their story, and what's their track record coming into this?
I'm hoping everybody knows their track record. It's a terrible record all over the world, because we got people from Australia, Poland, everywhere, from Russia, calling here because they're in the same battle, and it brings the environmental impacts that are taking place. And so with these other countries, Rio Tinto got away with so much damages, and now it's playing effect in their groundwater, their aquifers, even down into their deep water, even down to their health problems, but they can't do much in a lot of these places because of their government. So the reason why they're contacting us is because it's happening here in the United States, when the United States, gives this impression that, we're well tuned, we know what we're doing. So here in Arizona, let me tell your people the same thing I tell everybody. In following the process to get a land exchange, there are hoops you have to go through. We didn't know nothing. The town of Globe, Miami, Superior, San Carlos, all these places did not know nothing, because Resolution Copper was already discussing with our leadership in Washington and in Arizona about exemptions. So when they got the commitment from our politicians, without considering anybody, they moved forward. And that's when the fight began. So when we got word, we quickly went to Washington and began to educate the politicians that weren't from our state, because we weren't getting help from our state, because our state is in cahoots with Resolution Copper, the political leaders. Maybe not all of them, but the majority of them. So anyway, what happened next was the Forest Service, the Tonto National Forest Service, was with the tribe, telling the United States Congress that this land exchange was not a good deal, because they know nothing of the pros and cons, but they know that what they're going to exchange versus what they're going to get was upside down, completely upside down. Then they start whispering to the United States, saying to them that, don't you know 75% of the copper is going to China, and they detected uranium, so they're already on the market selling that, it's going to sell it to Iran. So we were able to hold that off all the way until 2014, when Paul Gosar for Arizona put it in the House for a vote. But we were able to get 3 Republicans, because they were educated. Everybody was educated that this wasn't a good deal. They were talking to the U.S. Forest Service. The Forest Service was saying this is not a good thing. And so 3 Republicans pulled. And so Paul Gosar had to pull the bill so it won't die in a vote. So he pulled it. But the very next year is when John McCain came up. And that's when he put it in a late night rider an hour before the passage of the National Defense Bill. And so Resolution Copper, to me, was defying, the system here, and had bought politicians already. And they were laughing about the whole thing, because they were going after exemptions. So what John McCain did in the bill, he did say that we will have discussions. The state of Arizona can have discussion about this, and there can be 5 hearings being done in the Southwest. But in the legislative bill, what John McCain put in there was regardless of the outcome, the land transfer will take place. So it was a dog and pony show. And what was really sad was a lot of Americans in Arizona fell for that. They were thinking that, okay, now we can speak up against the mine and it'll stop. So if you look at those presentations that were done, we would say a clear 95% people are against the mine. Non-natives, natives, everybody. The only ones that spoke for the mines was who resolution had already got for contractors. And they would say their piece and go out. But the Forest Service, because of what John McCain did, the Forest Service told the people, we'll listen to you. That's all we will do. So there was no response back from the Forest Service because they were already, John McCain had already exempt them. And so what we're looking at right now is the southern part of Arizona being a place of contamination. You're talking about deep water. When they shoot these acid in, it's going to hit deep water. And deep water flows from where I'm at all the way to Yuma, Arizona. Then they're talking about the waste products in the water going into the Gila River and going down towards Phoenix. Then they talk about the slur that's going to go behind Phoenix in South Mountain. There's a mountain called South Mountain. That's where it's going to go. Then they haven't even got the tailings yet. So where the tailings are going to go, the land for it. So what happened was that they talked to Ducey, and Ducey agreed that, he'll give up some of the state land and, tied in with BLM and also Tonto National Forest. So there's like 3 or 4 entities involved in this land. And so as we speak right now, they don't even have this land because Ducey left and we have Governor Hubbs in there now. And so there hasn't been no final agreement from the state. And so the state is waiting to see what's going to happen on this court case. Because, yeah, they've kind of committed themselves to Resolution Copper, but they haven't agreed to transfer over those state properties yet where the tailings are going to go. So that's all backwards and crazy because the United States gave them exemptions from all these things. And so when you talk about what's going to be airborne, when you talk about what's in the water, when you talk about the environment, all those are subject to be destroyed. So where I'm upset is we're already surrounded by minings. If you come into Arizona, all these mines are at its full force and having copper. So how is it that they're going after this mine and to do it and with everything being exempt? Then here, because everybody's close knit here, these mines are waiting for this land transfer to happen because they're next in line for exemptions from the law. And that's why you see what's happening in Washington, D.C. right now with them trying to pass this bill that will even give them corporations more access, to these land transfers and to what they're doing with extracting all these minerals. And that's the problem is when John McCain and Resolution Copper kicked this off, it's like America was sleeping. And now, because of this, what's really holding this fight is that our spiritual ways are going to be destroyed. Our spirit people where they live will be destroyed forever. That religiously is holding all this before it happens. And that's why this case is so critical, because on the religious part of it, it could stop this. But more importantly, it's going to expose how the United States operates. And I believe that's what they're really worried about. And that's what they're upset with me about, because we're going to expose how this works. People will be more familiar with the 1872 laws. People will be familiar with how politicians have gotten paid by Resolution Copper. And so right now, I mean, they're really trying to buy schools, mayors, they're out here left and right. And it just blows me away because, in America, when we talk, we act like these things don't exist here, but it exists in the other, countries. But we're so perfect. No. And I tell people, I said, I think the other countries are laughing at us because they're actually coming in our soil, our land, and extracting all these minerals and taking it back and they're reselling it to us. It doesn't make any sense. And like I said, Resolution Copper back in 2002, 2005, 2010, there was no discussion of no Green Deal. Never. Now they're trying to win the people over that this is going to help the new Green Deal. But where's all those other coppers going? There's plenty of copper that's already out there, plus to recycle. But what we see in my discussions when I was in the government, talking to political leaders, what they do tell me what they told me at that time was, Mr. Chairman Nosie, we agree with you, it's wrong, but that's not the American way. We are a corporate country, and the corporate way will solidify the problems that we have. It will take care of it. And so that's the response to me. And then the other response is that you're right. We understand the religion. I'm with you, but it's just not how America works. And so right now, and then the last conversation I had was that there has to be a wasteland somewhere. And so what we heard out of Washington, that Arizona is going to become that wasteland because they got to store something somewhere. So what they don't talk about is when Resolution Copper was proposing to John McCain, it was going to be a big, huge cavity. So what they're trying to do is store nuclear waste somewhere. So what we found out was John McCain had the idea that they would store nuclear waste in this cavity where they're going to take the copper. But what happened was that's when they detected uranium. And then that's when the negotiations began with Resolution Copper with Iran and to sell the product to them. And then they had to tell John McCain that they can't store any nuclear waste in there because you cannot store nuclear waste with active, it can't be active. And it's going to cause, huge devastation if something happens. So John McCain was upset. So he lost that part of what he was hoping for. So I don't know, from my experience is that the United States has to create one of the states to be a waste contaminated state. And it seems like they chose Arizona because everything you look at Arizona right now and then how they're operating, giving them all the water, groundwater, deep water, where are we going to go? So I think the United States is really being unfair and untruthful with what's happening in this country. And so we're looking at really a lot of contamination that's going to take place.
Doc and Rev, I guess my question for you that's coming from the audience, again, going back to looking at the land rights, there are laws that protect indigenous communities, but again, they have to be recognized by the government, unfortunately. Are there any recognized tribes that are signed on to your letter? And is there a way that we can somehow, as communities of faith, not only sign on, but reach out to see if we can get those that we partner with and that we know to sign on as well?
There's been several. I mean, there's been from the Midwest to the Western Coast, and some of the Eastern Coast tribes have now joined the case because now they're getting it. They're understanding, because it's a difficult thing to understand because everybody has the respect of the United States, and the United States is going to be fair. I hate saying it. A lot of people believe that, but you have to work and convince them that it's not. And that's kind of been the work of the Stronghold. And so now coming to the end of where we're going to the Supreme Court, now we have many. So we have the National Congress of American Indians that represents 500 recognized federal tribes have joined the amicus brief. So some tribes now are coming forward to join individually. So it's happening, like a domino effect is happening. The big issue we have is the fact that the Supreme Court has to take this case. Now, what people don't know is that going to the federal district court, going to the Ninth Circuit Court, and now heading to the Supreme Court, we're actually going with 6 judges who disagree with us and 6 judges who agree. That's where we're at, and our odds, the odds for us is good. But you come back to the conservative judges that sit in there, and that's where the big push is going to go, because we need them to take the case. So what I would say is that's why we're building the momentum, because this case is being monitored. Because if we win this case, or when we win it, it changes the laws that have hurt Indian country and has hurt this country. Because when you go to the environmental side of it, oak flats, like all these sacred places, in native ways, we call them females. Because here is abundance of water, medicine plants. You can be born there and you can die there from old age. So what blows us away is, how come the United States are not preserving these places? Because when we come to the point where we need to survive, these places are the only places we're going to find those seeds, those plants, those waters. And that's why I'm saying, if you think of the other country wondering how to destroy America and get to them, this is the way to do it. I mean, if you want to think militarily, they don't even have to shoot a rocket this way. Continue what they're doing, because the United States is falling for it. So anyway, I mean, that's kind of where we're at. You know, we need to have this case being heard. And that's why I'm so happy across this country that there's so many people. Well, I hope, you know, we have that major impact where like we're going to have CNN, we're going to have NBC, CBS. They're waiting for us to lay our court case in Washington. As soon as we lay that, then it's official, and they're going to run stories on it. But if it's just the Indian people standing there, I mean, it's going to be tough, and that's why we need everybody to be with us.
Thank you for all these responses you're giving to us. I think we have time for 2 more questions. I'd like, for the last question, I'm going to give you a heads up, Carol, if you'd close us out by telling us more about the journey and who's participating in it and what the meanings are associated with that. And but before we get there, we've got a question from the audience asking if there are parallels or similarities with other court battles and legal matters between what's going on with Oak Flat and what's happened with pipeline struggles like the Dakota Access Pipeline and with Enbridge. Can you draw some parallels or tell us about how these things are connected in some ways?
Well, I think the important thing to know is that in the United States, we're broken up by regions. So where we fall is under the Ninth Circuit Court. And so, like, when we talk about these pipelines and other places, they fall under another circuit court. And so rulings kind of tend to fluctuate from each other. But if you look at the West, it has to really be strong on the 1872 law so that they can continue to do exploratory and then find the minerals and do what they need to do. But that 1872 law does affect all over the country. It depends on those regionals and how they look at the issue. And so that's kind of what puts us a little different from each other about what's happening. But there's a law that was passed, Ling. So Ling affects every one of us. And that's what the district courts and the circuit courts use. But the only one that can change that is the Supreme Court, because that ruling came. And so then you have the question, like, then you have the part I was telling you about being exempt. So there's some fights that are going on where there was no exemption. But then when the United States want what they want and will do everything to get it, then that's when they exempt the laws. So my fight most of the time is so different than other fights because I'm fighting the United States with my hands tied behind our backs because they just wiped out our history, since we've been to time immemorial, our religion, they try to wipe that out. But that's why I said the only thing that's holding us in this fight is the religious position of the spiritual part connected between heaven and earth. That's the court case. That's different than all these other court cases because they're right on sacred land. All these lands are sacred, but I can't speak for their cases. I don't know what happened or where it went wrong, but I've been in this fight for over 44 years. So I know that when I had biological diversity, I had the Audubon, all these people who wanted to come help and join the case. I said no, because I said, stand with me, be with me, help me with your reference. That's where I need you, because when you go to these other, and I'm only talking about the West, you go to these court cases, Ola Castro Davis for Mount Graham did great. But when the ruling came down, not in our favor, was because of the other organizations. They found discrepancies on there. So I started checking cases, and every time somebody tried to help the tribe, at the beginning, they shut it down. So, but that was on the environmental issues, even though she talked about spiritual, they hit her with the environment. So here in our court case, it's just strictly spiritual, just like how Carol was talking about, because that is all of us. It's not, so the religion is going to protect the environment. We got to remember it exists together, but they're trying to divide it out and to do away here. So again, you have to look at the regions. What region does the pipelines? What are their circuit court they go to? Where do we go? And so our attorney reminded me that the important thing was we needed to get out of Arizona, the district court, and we needed to get out of the Ninth Circuit Court. So when they weren't ruling in our favor, that was all right, because now we're going to the Supreme Court, where the law of the land is made. And now we're going to confront them with these laws that they created against the earth. And that's what I'm excited about. It's a showdown. And I think all Americans should be excited, because it's going to dictate the next 50, 100 years. And hopefully by then, we raise our children right. We give them the truth. So if they become leaders, then a lot of this will be protected. We won't have to go through this again. And that's kind of, as people on this earth, we have the responsibility to teach our children, morals, ethics, and the importance of Mother Earth. And because right now, the United States does not prioritize water and air as an important mineral. All these other minerals are before water and air. And I'm like, come on, America. Come on, you can't live without water. You can't live without good air, but we give all this to our political people, and they're not doing it because they're interviewing for corporate people. I don't care, Republican or Democrat. They both do the same thing. I have 30 years experience working in the government, and it didn't matter. Sometimes I had a better meeting with Republicans. Sometimes I had a better meeting with the Democrats, but when it came to the environment and the land and the prosperity of America, they're the same. It didn't make any difference.
Thank you for those comparisons, distinctions, and insights. That's much appreciated. And as we unfortunately have to bring this to a close, I do want to turn it to Carol to tell us about the journey and more about that.
So it's a journey led by Apache Stronghold. I'm going to read my shirt. Prayer journey to the Supreme Court to protect Mother Earth, stop the shattering of Mother Earth and the human existence. Doesn't work to stand up, does it? So you can join this journey where you are. On Apache Stronghold's Facebook and Instagram, there's a general schedule, so you can see whether the journey will come to your area. And if there is an event that is open to the public in your area, it will appear there a couple of days before that event. So the specifics of it. Why would a persecuted people traveling to an incredibly important moment in legal history only announce where they're going to be at the last moment? Well, Wendsler did mention that there are death threats, there is harassment, and you have to balance getting people out and giving people a chance to be in person, and sometimes security concerns. So keep your eye on Apache Stronghold's social media to find where you can be. And if you're not in that particular place, our spirits are not bound to one place. So I'd like to close my part with prayer. Join me with me right now, and put all of your heart, all of your spirit with Wendsler, with all of Apache Stronghold. Join this case for religious freedom. Join this case for the land, for everyone right now. with your prayers in the way that you pray. Perhaps with a breath. And do that for the next couple of weeks, please. Amen.
Go.
Thank you so much, Carol. And thank you so much, Wendsler. This has been a wonderful webinar. I'm delighted that people will be able to continue to learn from it online by watching it. And I also want to acknowledge what a audience we have here today. We have some real leaders in this effort. I want to just thank Arizona Interfaith Power and Light for their leadership as well, and joining with organizations like Apache Stronghold and Dismantling the Doctrine of Discovery. And so thank you to everyone who's here with us today. And also we've got a terrific group joining us from United Theological Seminary in Minneapolis. And so we are delighted to have you all here with us today. It's been a terrific effort just to see so many people coming together for this important cause. And so let us continue this good work. Michael, I turn it to you for a final word.
I think we heard our final word from both of our panelists. Not only should we pray, but also get involved, actively get involved in this collective effort. This is a threat to all of us in a real way, just as their religious rights and sacred lands can be broached upon, ours can as well. So we don't need to wait until it happens to us to get into the fight, because if we wait until it happens to us, it'll be too late. Now is the time to get into the fight. I hope and pray to see you out on the battlefield fighting along with us. Amen.
Amen. All right.
And thank you.
Thank you.